Hello, and thank you for choosing this heartfelt, modest historical romance by C.E.Mallery. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support is appreciated and helps us continue bringing you more captivating tales, completely free. In each story are bits and pieces of true accounts of my personal life. So grab a pillow and make yourself at home and let your imagination transport you to a world of love, courage, and adventure in a time long past. Enjoy the story. Welcome to The Spinster, a story of loss, longing, and the quiet, persistent hope that blooms even in the darkest corners. This is the tale of Violet Hawthorne, a woman once hidden in the shadows of her family's grand, crumbling house who finds her way back to the world, to love, and to herself. Come closer. Listen to the wind in the lilacs, the laughter echoing through old halls, the heartbeat of a woman who dares to step into the light. This is not just a story of sorrow, but of transformation, a call to remember that it is never too late to begin again. Settle in, open your heart, and let the story of the spinster unfold. Chapter 1. The Last Caretaker. The kitchen is a world unto itself, a dim, echoing cavern that smells of burnt toast, boiled tea, and the slow rot of old, once beautiful floral wallpaper. I stand at the battered table, my hands trembling as I slice through a warm loaf of bread that crumbles at the edges, the knife scraping against the wood. The morning light seeped through the closed, dark curtains barely enough to chase away the shadows that clung to the corners. I can taste the dust in the air, feel it settle tasting gritty and stale. Miss Edith, the caretaker, moves about the kitchen with a kind of angry grace, her footsteps heavy, her breath coming in short, sharp bursts. Her hands are red and raw, the skin cracked from too many hours spent scrubbing, scouring, and caring for one of the most dissatisfied and ungracious women ever. I watch her from the doorway, half hidden by the faded curtain. My heart felt for her. Fluttering in my chest, I was like a trapped bird. I want to help her, to say something kind, but the words just wouldn't come out. Is it so hard to make a decent cup of tea? Mother's voice slices through the silence, brittle and cold. She sits at the head of the table, her back hunched, her thin hands clutching the arms of her wheelchair. Her hair, once a shining silver, is now dull and wispy, framing her face in a tangled halo. Her eyes, sharp as ever, fix on Edith with a look that could curdle milk. Edith sets the teacup down with a clatter, her lips pressed into a thin line. "It's the same tea as yesterday, Ms. Mabel. Can't you do anything right? Yesterday it was drinkable. Today it tastes like dishwater. And these eggs, are you trying to choke me? They're as hard as stones." I flinch at the sound of her voice, all the unthankful complaining, at the way it fills the room and leaves no space for anything else. I remember when her laughter used to ring through these halls, bright and cheery. It was musical, drawing people in like moths to a flame. Now her words are weapons, and I am always bracing for the next insult or impatient slur. Edith sighs, her shoulders slumping. "Would you like me to make something else? I can make you something different if you would like." Mother sniffs, her nose wrinkling in disdain. "As if you could. What are you even good for? I don't know why I bother with you. No one in this house remembers how things ought to be done." I want to defend Edith, to tell Mother she's doing her best she can, but I can't find the words. Instead, I hover in the doorway, my hands twisting in the fabric of my housecoat as usual. The fabric is thin and worn, the color faded from too many washings. I catch a glimpse of myself in the dark window, my hair unbrushed, my face is pale and drawn, my eyes ringed with shadows and look like a ghost. I'm haunting the ruins of my own life. Edith glances at me, her eyes tired and pleading. "Help me, Violet. Could you fetch your mother's shawl? She says she's cold." I nod. Oh, yes. Grateful for something to do. The hallway is colder than the kitchen, the air heavy with the scent of mildew and old wood. I pass the once enchanting parlor. Its grand piano is now shrouded in a dusty sheets, the once bright, beautiful woven tapestry of a rug now threadbare and stained. I remember dancing here as a child, my father's strong hands guiding me as I stood on his feet, dancing and twirling like no other. My mother's laughter echoing off the walls. So pleasing, so proud. The memory is so vivid I can almost hear the music, the rhythm, almost feeling the warmth of my father's hand in mine. I find the shawl draped over the back of a worn-out chair, soft and heavy in my hands. It smells faintly of lavender and mothballs, the fringe tangled slightly. I carry it back to the kitchen, draping it over Mother's shoulders with as much care as I can muster. She doesn't look at me. "It's about time. You're late," she says, her voice softer now, almost weary. I could have caught my death. "I'm sorry, Mother," I whisper, though I know it won't make any difference. Edith is scrubbing on a pan at the sink, her movements growing more frantic. The water runs red from her chapped hands, and I feel a pang of guilt. She's been here longer than any of the others, but I can see the cracks forming, the way she flinches at every word, every demand. I can tell she's at the end of her rope and wonder how long she will last. Mother picks at her breakfast, her fork scraping against the plate. "You used to make the best omelets, Violet. Do you remember? With fresh herbs from the garden? Not like this. This is a mess." I swallowed hard as though I had just choked, the memory rising up like a wave. I remember the garden in summer, the air thick with the scent of roses and lilacs, my hands stained green from picking herbs. I remember laughter, sunlight, and the warmth on my face, the feeling of breathing in that fresh goodness. Now, the garden is so high, it's a tangled web of weeds. You couldn't see out of the windows if you tried. "I could try again," I say, my voice barely more than a whisper. Mother waves me off. "No, it's too late for that. Everything's just too late." The words hang in the air, heavy and final. I feel them settle thick in my chest, a weight I can't shake. Edith slams the pan down, water splashing onto the floor and everywhere. "I can't do this anymore," she says, her voice shaking. "I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore." Mother looks up, startled. "What are you talking about, child?" "I'm leaving," Edith says, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I'm done. I've done my best here, but it's never enough. I can't say the right words, I can't do the right things. Nothing is ever right for you. I just can't. I can't stay here another day." I feel panic rising in my throat. My hands begin to shake. "Please, Edith, don't go. We need you." She shakes her head, her face red with anger. "I'm sorry, Violet, I really am, but I have to think of myself. I just can't do this anymore." She pulls off her apron, tossing it onto the table. The sound is shockingly loud in the silence. She grabs her coat from the hook by the door, her hands trembling. Mother's voice is sharp and desperate. "You can't just leave us, young lady. What will we do?" Edith pauses for a moment, turning her head to look at Mrs. Mabel, her hand on the doorknob. "You'll manage just fine. You always do." The door slams behind her, as it did with all the others, the sound echoing through the empty house. I stand frozen, my heart pounding, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. I couldn't believe what just happened. Edith stayed longer than all the rest. The silence that follows is absolute, broken only by the slow, labored breathing of my mother, and distant caw of the vultures swarming overhead as if they were waiting for something to die. I look at her. I looked at the woman who was once the center of everything, now shrunken and bitter, her eyes filled with a sorrow she cannot name. I want to reach out and comfort her, but I don't know how. I don't know if I ever could. The house feels colder now, the walls closing in. I wonder how much longer I can endure this darkness, this loneliness, this endless cycle of regret and longing. I press my hand to the window, feeling the chill seep into my bones and the warmth just on the other side. I close my eyes, remembering the warmth of sunlight, the scent of fresh flowers, the sound of laughter that once filled these rooms. I wonder if I will ever feel alive again. Chapter 2. The Weight of Memory. The house is quieter now, the kind of quiet that presses against your skin and seeps into your bones. I move through the rooms like a ghost, my footsteps muffled by the faded rugs, my breath echoing in the stillness. The air is thick with the scent of old wood and something sour, medicine perhaps, or the slow decay of things left unattended. I can hear Mother's breathing from the parlor, a slow, uneven rhythm that marks the hours of my days. I bring her tea, careful not to spill, careful not to make a sound that might disturb her. She sits in her chair by the window, wrapped in her shawl, her eyes fixed on the garden beyond the glass. The garden is a tangle of weeds and brambles now, the roses choked by wild grass, the stone path lost beneath a carpet of moss. I remember when it was a riot of color, when Mother would walk among the flowers, her laughter bright and clear, her hands trailing over the petals. Now she barely glances at me as I set the cup on the table beside her. "Thank you, Violet," she says, her voice thin and distant. "You remembered the sugar this time." I nod, though she doesn't see me. I want to say something, anything, to bridge the distance between us, but the words catch in my throat. I love her, I do, but the love is tangled up with so much pain, so much longing for things that can never be again. I slip away to the kitchen, my sanctuary and my prison. The sink is full of dishes, the counter cluttered with pill bottles and half-eaten meals. I wash the cups and plates, my hands moving automatically, the water hot and stinging against my skin. I watch the suds swirl down the drain and think of all the things I've lost. I am 38 years old. I have never been married. I have never even been kissed in a way that made me feel cherished. Not really. I catch sight of myself in the window, my reflection pale and blurred. My hair is dull and limp, my skin sallow, my eyes ringed with shadows. I look older than I am, older than I feel inside. I look like someone who has been forgotten. I remember when I was young, when I dreamed of being a dressmaker. I would sit at my little sewing table in the attic, the sunlight streaming through the window, my fingers flying over the fabric. I made dresses for the girls in town, bright, beautiful things with ribbons and lace. I dreamed of opening a shop, of seeing my name in gold letters on the window. I dreamed of love, too, of a man who would see me, really see me, and think I was beautiful. But then Father died and Mother fell ill and everything changed. The world shrank to the size of this house and my dreams faded like the colors in the old tapestries. I became the caretaker, the nurse, the daughter who never left. I told myself it was my duty, that I was needed, that love meant sacrifice. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder what it would feel like to be needed for myself, not for what I can do. I think of Thomas, the only man who ever courted me. He was handsome, in a rough sort of way, with a quick smile and strong hands. At first, I thought he was kind. He brought me wildflowers and whispered promises in the dark. But his kindness turned to anger, his hands to fists. He told me I was lucky he wanted me at all, that no one else ever would. I believed him for a while. I let him take pieces of me until there was almost nothing left. I left him, finally, after he left bruises on my arms and shame in my heart. I never told Mother. I never told anyone. I buried the pain deep inside, and I let it harden into something sharp and cold. I told myself I didn't need love, that I was better off alone. But sometimes when the house is quiet and the night is long, I ache for something more. Mother calls for me, her voice thin and reedy. I dry my hands and go to her, smoothing my hair as I pass the mirror. She looks up at me, her eyes clouded with pain and something else, regret, maybe, or fear. "Violet," she says, reaching for my hand. Her fingers are cold and fragile, the skin paper thin. "I'm sorry I'm such a burden." I kneel beside her, my heart twisting. "You're not a burden, Mother. You're my mother." She squeezes my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "You should have had a life, Violet. You should have had love and laughter and children of your own. I took all that from you." I shake my head, tears stinging my eyes. "No, Mother, you didn't take anything. I chose to stay. I chose you." She looks at me, really looks at me for the first time in years. "I'm sorry," she whispers. "I'm so sorry." I press my forehead to her hand, the tears slipping down my cheeks. For a moment we are just two women, bound by love and loss, by all the things we have given up and all the things we still hope for. The sun slips behind the clouds and the room grows dim. I light a lamp, the golden glow softening the edges of the shadows. I sit with Mother until she drifts off to sleep, her breathing slow and even. I watch her, my heart aching with love and sorrow. When she is finally asleep, I slip away to the attic. I open the old trunk where I keep my sewing things, the fabric soft and cool beneath my fingers. I run my hands over the silks and satins, the ribbons and lace. I close my eyes and remember what it felt like to dream. Maybe, I think, it's not too late. Maybe there is still a little beauty left in the world, even for someone like me. I thread a needle, the silver glint catching the light, and begin to sew. Chapter 3. The Man from Town. It had been years since I'd set foot in town. The world beyond the iron gates of Hawthorne House had become a distant memory, a place I visited only in dreams. But after Edith left, the house seemed to close in on itself, the walls pressing tighter, the air growing heavier with each passing day. Oh, how I missed her. She was a constant source of conversation for me while she was here. The pantry was nearly bare, the garden too wild to yield anything but thorns, and Mother's medicine was running low. I had no choice but to go. I dressed with trembling hands, choosing the least faded dress I owned, a plain gray thing, shapeless and practical. I brushed and pinned my blonde wavy hair back, though wisps escaped to frame my face, and I dabbed a bit of powder on my cheeks, hoping to hide the pallor that had settled there. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. My eyes were sunken in. Oh my, how haunting I looked, my mouth set in a line of worry. I tried to smile, but it just didn't feel right, as if my face had forgotten how. The walk to town was longer than I remembered. The road wound through fields gone fallow, the wildflowers choked by weeds. The air was sharp with the scent of autumn, damp earth, wood smoke, the faint sweetness of decaying leaves. I kept my head down, my heart pounding with every step, afraid of who I might meet, or worse, who might remember me. The hardware store sat on the corner of Main and Willow, its windows gleaming in the morning sun. I hesitated on the threshold. The bell above the door rang loud and clear. When I finally pushed inside, the warmth and light wrapped around me, carrying the scent of sawdust, oil, and something sweet. Apple pie, perhaps, from the bakery next door. Behind the counter stood a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, with sandy hair and kind eyes and a genuine smile. He wore a flannel shirt rolled at the sleeves, his hands strong and capable, stained with paint and grease. He looked up as I entered, his gaze lingering on me with a gentle curiosity. "Good morning," he said, his voice warm and steady. "Can I help you with something?" I hesitated for a second. I need some lamp oil and matches and—" I fumbled for the list I'd written, my hands shaking as I grabbed the list. "A few other things." He took the list from me. "Of course. I'll get these together for you." He glanced at the address at the top of the page, his brow furrowing. "Hawthorne House, up on the hill?" I nodded, bracing myself for the questions, the pity, the gossip, but his expression was only one of genuine interest. "I haven't seen anyone from up there in a long time," he said, gathering the items with practiced ease. "Folks in town have been wondering. Is everything all right?" I swallowed, unsure how much to reveal. "My mother's been ill. It's just the two of us now. Well, we manage." He paused, setting a tin of lamp oil on the counter. "I'm sorry to hear that. Your mother, Ms. Mabel, she used to come to the church socials. My mother always said she was the life of the party." A memory struck me. Mother in her long, flowing dress, laughter ringing out beneath the lanterns, her cheeks flushed with happiness. I nodded, unable to speak. He seemed to sense my discomfort. "I'm Samuel, by the way. Samuel Carter. I run the store now after my father passed." He smiled, a little shyly. "I brought something for you, actually. Well, for your mother." He reached beneath the counter and produced a small basket, lined with a red checked cloth. Inside were apples, still warm from the sun, and a jar of honey. "I thought you might like these," he said, "from my orchard, and if you need anything, like repairs or firewood, anything at all, just let me know. I'd be happy to help." No one had ever come to see about us before. For a moment I was so startled I could only stare at him. The kindness in his eyes was almost too much. I felt something inside me shift, though, the tightness loosening. The weight I had been carrying has shifted. "Thank you very much," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "That's very kind." He shrugged, smiling. It's nothing really. I know what it's like to feel alone up there. My father was sick for a long time. People forget sometimes how hard it can be to care for a parent." I looked down at my hands, ashamed of the way they trembled. It's been a long time since anyone asked. He was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "You don't have to lock yourself away in that big old house, you know. You could come to town more often." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to reach out to let myself be seen, but I had no words. I took the basket, the apples warm and fragrant beneath my fingers, and tried to smile. "Thank you, Samuel. I should be going. Mother will be waiting." He nodded, okay, shaking his head. "If you ever need anything, Violet, you know where to find me." I left the store, the bell chiming softly behind me. The sun was brighter now, the air sweeter, the weight on my shoulders a little lighter. I walked home with the basket cradled in my arms, the scent of apples and honey filling the air. For the first time in years, I felt something like hope, a fragile, trembling thing but real. As I climbed the hill, the house came into view, its windows dark and watchful, the garden wild and overgrown. Realizing how dreadful it really was, I paused at the gate, the basket heavy in my arms, and looked back at the town below. The world seemed wider somehow. Inside, Mother was waiting, her eyes sharp with curiosity. "What took you so long?" she demanded, but her gaze softened when she saw the basket. "What's that?" "Someone in town sent these," I said, setting the apples on the table. "Samuel Carter. He said he remembered you from the church socials." Mother's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Carter? Oh yes, Carter. His mother made the best lemon cakes. I remember now." I watched her, the sunlight catching in her hair, and for a moment, I saw the woman she used to be, the woman I used to be too. I sat beside her, the apples between us, and let the warmth of the day settle over us both. Maybe I thought it wasn't too late. Maybe kindness could find its way even into the loneliest places. Chapter 4. The Garden in Ruin. The morning sun crept through the heavy curtains, painting an outline of stripes across the parlor floor. I stood at the window, watching the light shift and flicker, and felt the old ache in my chest, the ache of I was so familiar with. My day wasn't starting out so good. Feelings, memories, and I knew Mother didn't have very long. The house was quiet, save for the slow tick of the clock and Mother's faint, restless breathing from her room. What was I going to do without her? Feelings that hit me like nothing before. I needed some air. I needed some space. I felt the walls closing in and I knew I just needed to pray. Mother was sleeping, so I wrapped a shawl around my shoulders and stepped out the back door, blinking against the sudden brightness. The garden greeted me with a wild, tangled beauty, roses climbing in unruly arcs over the crumbling trellis, violets and dandelions crowding the path, the grass grown tall and lush with neglect. The air was thick with the scent of dirt and green things, of decay and new life tangled together. I breathed it in, letting it fill my lungs, letting it remind me that the world was still turning, even if I had forgotten how to move with it. The stone walkway to the gate was nearly lost beneath a carpet of moss and fallen leaves. I knelt and began to pull at the weeds, my fingers sinking into the cool, damp soil. The earth clung to my skin, gritty and alive. I tugged at the stubborn roots, feeling the ache in my arms, the satisfying snap as they gave way. I worked in silence. The only sound was the soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of a mourning dove. As I cleared away the weeds, memories rose up around me, as vivid as the scent of crushed grass. I saw myself as a child, kneeling beside my father as he pressed bulbs into the earth, his hands large and gentle, his voice low and patient. "You have to be gentle, Violet," he'd say, guiding my small hands. "You see this beautiful flower over here? It's a violet. It's the most beautiful flower in the garden, and we named you after it. The earth will give you back what you give to it. Always remember this, Violet." I remembered the way my mother's voice would drift from the veranda, singing old songs as she watched us work, her laughter bright as sunlight. I swept the walkway with an old broom, the bristles worn and soft. Dust and petals swirled in the air, catching the light. I trimmed back the wild vines that had strangled the rose bushes, freeing the blooms that struggled to open. My hands stung from the thorns, but I didn't mind. The pain was sharp and real, a reminder that I was still here, still capable of feeling something other than sorrow. I found a patch of violets blooming beneath the shade of the old oak tree, their petals delicate and bright against the dark earth. I gathered a handful, along with a few bedraggled roses, their beauty battered but not broken. I held them to my face, breathing in their scent, sweet and faint, tinged with the memory of summer afternoons and laughter. For a moment, I let myself remember what the garden used to be. I saw it in my mind's eye, the beds neat and orderly, the air alive with bees and butterflies, the sound of my parents' voices mingling with the wind. I remembered the taste of strawberries warm from the sun, the feel of grass beneath my bare feet, the joy of belonging to something beautiful. But the garden was not what it once was. It was wild now, unruly and half lost, but there was a strange comfort in its ruin. Life persisted, stubborn and defiant, pushing up through the cracks. I felt a flicker of hope, small and fragile, but real, a reminder that beauty could survive, even here, even now. I carried the flowers inside, my hands stained with earth, my heart lighter than it had been in years. Mother was sitting in her chair by the window, her shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders. She looked up as I entered, her eyes sharp and appraising. "What's that?" she asked, her voice edged with suspicion. "Flowers," I said, holding them out to her. "From the garden. They're blooming again." She took the bouquet, turning it over in her hands. "They're a mess," she said, her mouth twisting. "Not like they used to be. You should have left them where they were." Her words stung, but I saw the way her fingers lingered on the petals, the way her eyes softened for just a moment. I sat beside her, watching the sunlight catch in her hair, and let the silence settle between us. I looked down at my hands, at the dirt beneath my nails, and felt something shift inside me. The garden was in ruin, yes, but it was alive. I was alive. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. I closed my eyes and let the scent of violets fill the room, letting it remind me that even in the midst of decay, there could be something beautiful, something worth tending. I think the garden knew exactly what I was going through. Chapter 5. Letters Never Sent. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that settles in after a long rain, when the world holds its breath and every sound is muffled by memory. Mother had drifted into a rare, peaceful sleep, her breathing soft and even, and I found myself wandering the halls, drawn by a restlessness I couldn't name. The air was cool and heavy with the scent of old paper and dust, the kind of scent that clings to your skin and makes you feel as if you've stepped back in time. I found myself in Father's study, a room I had avoided for years. The door creaked as I pushed it open, the hinges protesting after so much neglect. The room was just as he'd left it. Books stacked in neat towers, the old leather chair worn smooth by years of use, the heavy desk scattered with yellowed papers and a tarnished silver pen. The window was streaked with rain, the glass clouded and cold to the touch. I lit a candle, the flame flickering and casting long shadows across the room. The light caught on something tucked away in the bottom drawer of the desk, a small wooden box, its surface scratched and faded, tied with a ribbon that had once been blue but was now the color of old sky. My heart fluttered as I lifted it out, the weight of it both comforting and strange. I untied the ribbon with trembling fingers, the knot stiff with age. Inside, the box was filled with letters, their edges curled and soft, the ink faded to a gentle gray. I recognized Father's handwriting immediately, strong, looping, full of life. I held the first letter to my nose, breathing in the faint scent of tobacco and lavender, and then I began to read. The words spilled out like sunlight, warm and golden, full of laughter and hope. He wrote to Mother of dances beneath the stars, of picnics by the river, of dreams for a future that seemed endless and bright. He wrote of love, so much love it ached to read it, of the way her smile could light up a room, of the way he longed to grow old with her. There were letters to me, too, written when I was just a child. He wrote of the first time he held me, of the way I giggled when he spun me around the garden, of the dreams he had for me, dreams of happiness, of adventure, of a life lived boldly and well. I read until the candle burned low, the wax pooling on the desk, my eyes pouring with tears. Each letter was a window into a world I barely remembered, a world where such love was simple and hope was easy. I ached for that world, for the people we used to be, for the future we never found. The silence pressed in around me, thick and heavy. I thought of all the things I had never said, all the words I had swallowed, all the dreams I had let slip away. I thought if I could ever have a love like this. I had a relationship once, but nothing like this. This was deep, never-ending love. A love that was so warm, so tender. On a sudden impulse, I pulled a sheet of paper from the drawer and dipped the pen in ink. The words came slowly at first, then faster, tumbling out in a rush. It started, "To the man of my dreams." It has been so long since I last wrote, and I hardly know where to begin. The days here are quiet, and the house feels emptier than ever. Mother is ill, and I am alone with her most days, tending to the garden, keeping the rooms in order, trying to remember how to hope. Sometimes I feel as if I am fading, like the wallpaper in the parlor, like the roses in the garden that bloom and wither and bloom again. Do you remember the summer we spent by the river, the way we swore we would never let the world make us small? I think of that often, and I wonder if you kept your promise. I hope you did. I hope you are happy, wherever you are. I miss you. I miss the sound of your laughter, the way you made me feel brave. I wish I could tell you everything, but I don't know where to start. I wish I could see you again, just once, and remember what it feels like to be known. With love, always, Violet. I stared at the letter, the ink still glistening, my heart pounding in my chest. For a moment, I imagined sealing it, addressing it, walking down to the post office and sending it out into the world. I imagined my beloved reading it, his eyes lighting up, his laughter ringing out across the miles. I imagined for a moment that I was not so alone, but when the candle guttered and the shadows crept in, I folded the letter and slipped it into the box with the others. I tied the ribbon tight, tucking the box back into the drawer. Some words, I thought, were meant to be kept close, like secrets or prayers. Some dreams were too fragile to send out into the world. I blew out the candle and sat in the darkness, the scent of wax and old paper lingering in the air. I pressed my hand to my heart, feeling it beat steady and strong, and let myself hope, just for a moment, that love, once written, could never truly be lost. Chapter 6. The Stranger at the Gate. The morning was heavy with mist, the kind that clings to your skin and softens the edges of the world. I stood at the kitchen window, watching the garden coming around. I worked in it a little each day, seeing a very slow accomplishment. The roses and violets little more than smudges of color in the haze. The house was quiet, except for the slow tick of the clock on the wall and the distant creak of Mother's chair as she dozed in the parlor. I felt suspended, as if the world itself was at a stop. A sudden sound, a sharp metallic rattle, broke the silence. It startled me, my heart leaping in my chest. I pressed my hand to the glass, peering through the fog. There, at the gate, stood a figure. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming, conjuring ghosts from the past. But as the mist shifted, I saw him clearly. A young man, tall and broad-shouldered, his hair the color of wheat, his coat dark against the pale morning. He stood with one hand on the iron gate, the other holding a battered satchel, his face turned up toward the house. I couldn't see him very well. I hesitated, fear and curiosity warring inside me. No one ever came to Hawthorne House, not anymore. The townspeople kept their distance, their curiosity dulled by years of silence and sorrow. Yet here he was, a stranger at our gate, as real as the chill in the air. I wiped my hands on my apron and stepped outside, the cold biting at my cheeks. The garden was slick with dew, the stones slippery beneath my feet. I moved slowly, my heart pounding, my breath clouding in the air. He saw me and smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Good morning," he called, his voice gentle, careful not to startle me. "I hope I'm not intruding, but—" I shook my head, my voice caught somewhere between my heart and my throat. "No, not at all. Can I help you?" He stepped closer, careful to keep his distance as if he sensed how alarmed I felt. "My name's Samuel Carter. We met briefly at the hardware store a few months back. I brought you apples, remember?" I nodded, the memory surfacing like a stone in a pond. His kindness had lingered with me, a small, bright thing in the darkness. He glanced at the house, his brow furrowing with concern. "There's been talk in town. Folks are worried about you. No one's seen much movement up here and, well, I volunteered to come check, to see if you and your mother needed anything." I felt my cheeks flush, embarrassment and gratitude mingling in a way that made me want to hide and weep all at once. "That's very kind of you. We're managing. It's just been a difficult season." He nodded, his eyes never leaving mine. "I can imagine. This old place must be a lot to keep up with." I looked back at the house, its windows dark and watchful, the paint peeling from the eaves, the garden wild and overgrown. "It is," I admitted, my voice barely more than a whisper. "Sometimes it feels like the house is swallowing us whole." He smiled, a little sadly. "I know what that's like. My father's place was the same after he passed. Houses remember, I think. They hold on to things." I found myself smiling back, the tension in my shoulders easing just a little. Would you like to come in? I can make tea." He hesitated, glancing at the house, then nodded. "I'd like that." Inside, the air was thick with the scent of old books and lavender polish, feeling a bit embarrassed about the condition of the house. I led him to the parlor, where Mother sat in her chair, her shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders. She looked up as we entered, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Who is this?" she demanded. "Do I know you?" I swallowed, suddenly shy. "This is Samuel Carter, Mother. He's from town. He came to see if we needed anything." She sniffed, her gaze appraising. "We don't need any charity." Samuel smiled, undeterred. "It's not charity, ma'am, just neighborliness. My mother always said it's good to look out for one another." Mother's eyes softened, just a fraction. "Your mother was a sensible woman, you know." I hurried myself in the kitchen, my hands shaking as I prepared the tea. I could hear their voices drifting through the doorway. Mother's sharp and brittle, Samuel's warm and steady. He asked about the house, the garden, the old days when Hawthorne House was the pride of the town. Mother answered, her voice growing softer as she spoke of parties and picnics, of laughter and music and the scent of roses in the summer air. I brought in the tea, setting the tray on the table. Samuel thanked me, his eyes meeting mine with such kindness. With no judgment, we sat together, the three of us, the silence between sips filled with stories and memories. We laughed and reminisced about the good old days, letting time just slip away. After a while, Mother grew tired and excused herself, leaving Samuel and me alone in the fading light. I felt awkward and unsure what to say, but he was patient, his presence gentle and unhurried. "You've done a good job keeping this place together," he said quietly. "It couldn't have been easy." I looked down at my hands, the knuckles raw from work, the nails rimmed with earth. Some days I feel like I'm just holding the pieces together with string and hope. He reached across the table, his hand warm and solid. Hope's a good thing to have. Sometimes it's all we get. I looked up. For a moment, the world outside the window faded away. My heart of sorrow, the years of loneliness. All that remained was the warmth of his hand, the kindness in his eyes. I didn't realize he knew exactly how I felt. We talked a while longer about grief and how it can just take the life right out of you. He told me what he did to help him overcome that. He encouraged me in those things we shared. I began to see things in a different light. As he stood to leave, he paused at the door, turning back to me. "If you ever need anything, I mean it, Violet. Anything at all, please don't hesitate. You know where to find me." I nodded, my heart feeling a little overwhelmed. "Okay. Thank you, Samuel. Truly." He smiled, and for the first time in a long while I felt a speck of something new. Chapter 7. The Light in the Attic. The nights had grown colder, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and lingers long after the fire has died. I could feel it in my fingers as I tucked Mother in the way the windows rattled in their frames, in the hush that settled over the house after dark. The old quilts were no longer enough, and so, one evening, I found myself climbing the narrow attic stairs, a candle in my hand, searching for forgotten blankets and perhaps a little warmth from the past. The attic was a world apart, a place where time seemed to slow and memories gathered like dust in the corners. The air was thick with the scent of cedar and mothballs. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet. My breath made little clouds in the chill, and the candle's flame flickered, casting long, uncertain shadows across the rafters. I moved carefully, brushing aside cobwebs, my heart beating with a strange mix of dread and anticipation. I found the old trunks stacked against the far wall, their brass fittings dulled with age. I knelt and opened the largest one, expecting only moth-eaten blankets and forgotten winter coats. But as I lifted the lid, a different kind of treasure revealed itself. Bolts of fabric still bright beneath the dust, emerald green velvet, pale blue silk, a length of rose-colored satin that shimmered in the candlelight. Spools of thread, some nearly empty, others still full and vibrant. My sketchbooks, the pages yellowed but the lines still bold, filled with drawings of gowns I once dreamed of making. I ran my fingers over the fabric, feeling the cool smoothness of the silk, the soft nap of the velvet, the crispness of the taffeta. The colors seemed to glow in the dim light, a secret garden blooming in the darkness. A wave of longing washed over me, so sharp it almost hurt. I remembered the girl I used to be, the girl who believed in beauty, who lost herself in the whir of the sewing machine, who dreamed of dressing the world in color and light. I remembered the thrill of creation, the way my heart would race as a dress took shape beneath my hands, the joy of seeing something lovely where before there had been only scraps and thread. I sat back on my heels, the candle flickering beside me, and let the memories wash over me. I saw myself at 16, hunched over the machine, my hair falling in my eyes, my fingers nimble and sure. I heard my father's voice drifting up the stairs. "Violet, come down for supper," and my mother's laughter as she tried on a dress I'd made for her, twirling in the parlor, the skirt swirling around her ankles. I pressed a scrap of blue silk to my cheek, breathing in the faint scent of lavender that still clung to it. For the first time in years, I felt something like hope. A small, bright spark, fragile but real. I found the old sewing machine beneath a dust cloth, its black enamel still gleaming beneath the grime. I set it on the table by the window, where the moonlight spilled in, silver and cold. My hands shook as I threaded the needle, the motion both foreign and achingly familiar. I chose a piece of rose satin, the color of dawn, and began to sew. The machine whirred to life, the sound soft and steady, a lullaby in the quiet house. I lost myself in the rhythm, the needle darting in and out, the fabric sliding beneath my fingers. The world outside faded away. The sorrow, the loneliness, the weight of all I had lost. There was only the work, the beauty taking shape stitch by stitch. I sewed late into the night, the candle burning low, the moon rising higher. I made a simple dress, nothing fancy, but as I held it up to the light, I felt a surge of pride. I had made something beautiful, something new. I was not just a caretaker, not just a shadow in a crumbling house. I was Violet Hawthorne, and I could still create, still dream. As I folded the dress and set it aside, I heard a soft knock at the attic door. I turned, startled, to see Mother standing in the doorway, her shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders. "What are you doing up here, child?" she asked, her voice softer than I'd heard it in years. I held up the dress, my heart in my throat. "I was sewing. I found my old things." She stepped into the room, her eyes shining in the candlelight. She reached out, her fingers trembling, and touched the fabric. "It's beautiful, Violet. You always had a gift." I blinked back tears, the warmth of her words settling over me like a blessing. "Thank you, Mother." She smiled, a real smile, and for a moment the years fell away. We stood together in the attic, surrounded by the ghosts of our past, and I felt the light return, a little at a time, but enough to see by. That night, as I lay in bed, the dress folded neatly beside me, I let myself dream again, of color, of beauty, of a life not yet finished. The light in the attic had found its way into my heart, and I knew at last that I was not lost, not yet. Chapter 8. The Scent of Lilacs. Spring arrived quietly, as if it were afraid to disturb the hush that had settled over Hawthorne House. One morning, I woke to the sound of birdsong, clear and insistent, a melody that seemed to tug at the edges of my dreams. I lay in bed for a moment, listening, letting the music seep into the cracks of my heart. The air was different, lighter somehow, carrying with it the feeling of something new. When I rose and padded barefoot to the window, I saw the garden transformed. The lilacs had burst into bloom overnight, their branches heavy with clusters of pale purple flowers. The scent drifted up on the breeze, sweet and heady, filling the room with memories of childhood springs, of laughter and sunlight, of my mother's hands weaving lilac crowns for my hair, of my father's voice calling me in for supper as the sky turned gold. I opened the window, just a crack at first, and the fragrance rushed in, swirling around me like a gentle embrace. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, letting the scent fill my lungs, letting it remind me that life could still be beautiful, even here, even now. The house had been shuttered for so long, the curtains drawn tight against the world. The rooms were dim and close, the air stale with the weight of too many unspoken words. But something in me had shifted, a stubbornness, a longing for light. I moved from room to room, pulling back the heavy drapes, letting sunlight spill across the faded rugs and dust-laden furniture. The beams of light revealed motes of dust dancing in the air, golden and alive, and for the first time in years, I did not feel ashamed of the house's decay. I felt only relief, as if I could finally breathe. Mother's voice rang out from the parlor, sharp and anxious. "Violet, what are you doing? Close those curtains at once. People will see in. The sun will fade the fabric." I paused in the doorway, the sunlight warm on my face. "It's spring, Mother. The house needs air. We need air." She frowned, her hands twisting in her lap. "It's not proper. We've always kept the curtains drawn. You know that." I knelt beside her, taking her hands in mine. Her skin was thin and cool, her fingers trembling. "We've been living in the dark for too long. Let's have a little light, just for today." She looked at me, her eyes searching my face. For a moment I saw the fear there, the fear of change, of being seen, of letting go. But beneath it I saw something else, a flicker of longing, a memory of the woman she used to be. "Just for today," she said at last, her voice barely more than a whisper. I smiled, pressing her hands to my cheek. "Just for today." I opened every window, every door, letting the lilac-scented breeze sweep through the house. The air grew sweeter, the shadows less menacing. I watched as the sunlight crept across the floor, chasing away the gloom, painting the walls with gold. I felt the house sigh, as if it, too, had been waiting for this moment. I carried a vase of fresh lilacs into the parlor, setting it on the table beside Mother's chair. She reached out, her fingers brushing the petals, her eyes softening. "They're beautiful," she murmured, her voice thick with memory. "Your father used to bring me lilacs every spring. He said they were the color of your eyes." I blinked back tears, the ache in my chest both sweet and sharp. I remember. We sat together in the sunlight, the scent of lilacs wrapping around us, and for a little while, the house felt less like a tomb and more like a home. I watched the light play across Mother's face, softening the lines of worry and pain, and I let myself hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. As the afternoon faded into evening, I stood at the open window, the breeze cool against my skin. I watched the garden sway in the golden light, the lilacs nodding their heavy heads, and I felt something inside me begin to bloom, a fragile, trembling hope as delicate and persistent as spring itself. For the first time in years, I was not afraid of the light. I let it in, and I let it change me. Chapter 9. The Dance of Shadows. That night, sleep came in fits and starts, my mind restless with memories that flickered like candlelight behind my eyes. I drifted in and out of dreams, each one more vivid than the last, a kaleidoscope of color and laughter, of music and movement, of a world that once belonged to me. In my dream, the house was alive with light. The parlor glowed with golden lamplight, the walls draped in garlands of roses and ribbons. I wore a dress of pale blue satin, the skirt swirling around my ankles as I spun across the polished floor. Laughter bubbled from my lips, light and free, and the air was thick with the scent of lilacs and perfume. My father's hand was warm in mine, guiding me through the steps of a waltz, his eyes shining with pride. Mother watched from the doorway, her cheeks flushed, her smile radiant. The room was filled with music, piano and violin, voices raised in song, the sound of joy echoing off the high ceilings. I danced and danced, the world spinning around me, the shadows kept at bay by the brilliance of the moment. I was young and beautiful, beloved and unafraid. I belonged to the world, and it belonged to me. But as dreams do, the scene began to fade. The music grew distant, the light dimmed, and the laughter dissolved into silence. I reached out, desperate to hold on, but the vision slipped through my fingers like water. I woke with a start, my cheeks wet with tears, the ache of longing sharp and deep in my chest. The house was silent, the only sound the slow, steady tick of the clock in the hallway. I lay in bed for a moment, letting the sorrow wash over me, letting myself mourn for all that was lost. The world I had known was gone, replaced by shadows and silence, by days that stretched on without color or song. But as I lay there, I remembered the music, the way it had filled the house, the way it had made me feel alive. I rose quietly, wrapping a shawl around my shoulders, and padded down the darkened hallway to the parlor. The piano stood in the corner, draped in a faded cloth, its keys yellowed with age. I hesitated, my fingers trembling, then lifted the cover and sat on the worn bench. The first notes were hesitant, my hands stiff and uncertain. The melody faltered, broken by years of neglect, but I pressed on, letting the music guide me. My fingers stumbled over the keys, searching for the patterns I once knew by heart. The sound was thin and wavering, but as I played, something inside me loosened, a knot of grief and longing, unraveling with each note. I closed my eyes and let the music carry me, back to the days when the house was filled with laughter and light, when I was young and unafraid. I played for the girl I used to be, for the woman I had become, for the mother who listened from her room, her eyes closed, her face softened by memory. The music drifted through the house, weaving through the shadows, chasing away the silence. I imagined Mother lying in her bed, her hands folded on her chest, her lips curved in a faint smile. I imagined her remembering her own days of glory, the dances and the parties, the suitors who vied for her attention, the nights when she was the queen of the ball. When the last note faded, I sat in the quiet, my hands resting on the keys, my heart beating slow and steady. The shadows still lingered, but they no longer seemed so menacing. The music had brought a measure of peace, a reminder that beauty could still be found, even in the darkest of places. I rose and closed the piano, the echo of the melody lingering in the air. As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror above the mantel, my hair loose around my shoulders, my eyes bright with tears. For the first time in a long while, I saw not just the woman I had lost, but the woman I still was. I returned to bed, the memory of the music warm in my chest, and let myself dream again, not of what was lost, but of what might still be found. Chapter 10. The Return of the Past. The day was thick with the scent of roses and the hum of bees, sunlight pouring through the kitchen window in golden sheets. I was kneading bread, the dough warm and pliant beneath my hands, when a sharp knock rattled the front door. The sound startled me, echoing through the quiet house, and for a moment I stood frozen, heart thudding in my chest. Visitors were rare, and the world outside our gate felt impossibly distant. I wiped my hands on my apron and crossed the hall, the floorboards creaking beneath my feet. As I opened the door, a rush of summer air swept in, carrying with it the green, living smell of the garden and something else, something old and bittersweet. He stood on the threshold, framed by sunlight and shadow. Thomas. Older now, his hair peppered with gray, his face leaner, the lines around his eyes deeper. He wore a worn jacket, his hands shoved awkwardly in his pockets, and when he looked at me, I saw a flicker of the boy I once loved, before the anger, before the bruises, before the silence. For a heartbeat, the years fell away. I remembered the first time he kissed me, the taste of apples on his lips, the way he made me laugh until I couldn't breathe. I remembered, too, the way his voice could turn cold, the way his hands could hurt. The memory was sharp, a thorn beneath the skin. "Violet," he said, his voice rough, uncertain. "May I come in?" I hesitated, the old ache rising in my chest, but I stood my ground. The sunlight was warm on my face, and I felt the strength of the earth beneath my feet. "You can say what you need to say from there." He nodded, glancing down at the porch boards, then back at me. "I heard about your mother. I'm sorry. I wanted to see you, to say I'm sorry for everything." The words hung in the air, heavy as summer heat. I studied his face, searching for the man I once trusted, the man who had broken me. He looked tired, his eyes shadowed with regret. "Why now?" I asked, my voice steady, though my hands trembled at my sides. "Why after all these years?" He swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. "I've thought about you every day, Violet, about what I did. I was angry, lost. I took it out on you, and I've hated myself for it. Can you just please forgive me? I needed you to know I'm sorry. I've been thinking about this for a long time, Violet. Can't we just put all the things behind us and start over again? I'm sorry, and I want you back. Please, Violet." A breeze stirred the roses by the door, their petals brushing against my arm, soft and cool. I remembered the girl I was, the girl who believed love could save her, who let herself be diminished piece by piece. I remembered the nights I cried alone, the mornings I woke with resolve hardening in my chest. "You hurt me, Thomas," I said, my voice low but clear. "You made me feel small. You made me believe I was unworthy of love. I carried that for a long time." He flinched, his eyes shining with unshed tears. I know I can't undo it. I wanted you to know I see it now. I see you." I looked past him, to the garden wild with summer, the sunlight glinting off the leaves, the air thick with the promise of rain. I felt the weight of the years, the sorrow and the strength I had gathered, the way I had learned to stand on my own. "I forgive you," I said, the words tasting strange and new on my tongue. "But I can't forget. I won't let myself. I am not the girl you left behind. I am more than you ever saw." He nodded, a tear slipping down his cheek. You always were. I was just too blind to see it. We stood in silence, the world holding its breath. I felt a strange peace settle over me, as if a door had finally closed. I was not defined by his cruelty anymore, nor by my pain. I was free. He slowly stepped back a few steps, his voice soft. I hope you find happiness, Violet. You deserve it, more than anyone I know. I watched him walk down the path, his figure shrinking against the riot of summer green. The roses brushed my arm again, their scent sweet and sharp, and I breathed it in, feeling the sun on my face, the solid earth beneath my feet. Inside, the house was filled with light, the shadows chased away by the open windows. Darkness was no more. The scent of bread rising in the oven. I leaned against the door, my heart steady and strong, and letting myself feel the fullness of owning this very moment. All the pain, all the sorrow, and all the overcoming power of forgiveness. I was not afraid of the past anymore. I had faced it, spoken my truth, and survived. I was stronger now than I had ever known, strong enough to forgive, strong enough to let go, strong enough to begin again. The world outside was alive with color and music, and I now felt ready to step into it. Chapter 11. The Breaking Point. The days grew shorter, the light in the house thinning to a pale, watery gold. The garden, so recently alive with lilacs and roses, began to fade, petals falling like confetti onto the damp earth. The air inside was heavy with the scent of medicine and old linens, the hush of waiting. I moved through the rooms quietly, my footsteps muffled by the thick carpets, my heart heavy with a dread I could not name. Mother's decline was sudden, a swift unraveling. She grew smaller each day, her skin translucent as parchment, her eyes too large for her face. The sharpness that had once defined her wit, her tongue, her endless complaints, softened, replaced by a kind of trembling uncertainty. She called for me more often, her voice thin and frightened in the night. One evening, as the sun slipped behind the trees and the house filled with shadows, I found her sitting in her chair by the window, her shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders. She was staring out at the garden, her hands twisting in her lap. I knelt beside her, tucking the blanket more securely around her legs. "Are you cold, Mother?" She shook her head, her gaze distant. "No, not cold, just empty. The world feels so far away, Violet, I can't seem to reach it anymore." Her words pierced me, sharp and unexpected. I took her hand in mine, feeling the bones beneath her skin, the faint tremor in her fingers. "I'm here," I whispered. "You're not alone." She looked at me then, really looked at me, her eyes shining with tears. "I'm sorry, Violet, for all the things I said, for the way I pushed you away. I was so angry, at your father for leaving, at myself for growing old, at you for staying. I thought if I kept the world out, I could keep the pain out too, but it only made me lonelier." I pressed her hand to my cheek, my own tears slipping free. "I know, Mother. I know." She squeezed my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "I'm afraid, Violet. Afraid of what comes next. Afraid of being forgotten. I spent my whole life trying to be important, to be remembered. But now all I want is to know I mattered to someone, that I wasn't just a burden." I leaned in, brushing her hair back from her forehead. "You mattered to me. You always have. Even when it was hard, even when you were angry. I stayed because I love you." She closed her eyes, a single tear tracing down her cheek. "I love you too, Violet. I just didn't know how to show it. I was so afraid of being left behind." I held her as she wept, her body shaking with the force of her sorrow. The bitterness that had once filled the house seemed to dissolve, replaced by something softer, more fragile. I rocked her gently, humming the lullaby she used to sing to me when I was small, the melody trembling in the quiet room. In the days that followed, I cared for her as she had once cared for me, feeding her spoonfuls of broth, brushing her hair, holding her hand through the long, sleepless nights. Our roles had reversed, the old wounds between us beginning to heal. We spoke of the past, of the things we had lost, and the things we still hoped for. She told me stories I had never heard, her voice growing weaker but her spirit shining through. One afternoon, as the rain tapped softly against the window, she reached for me, her eyes clear and bright. "Promise me you'll live, Violet. Promise me you'll find happiness, even after I'm gone." I pressed her hand to my heart, the weight of her love and her fear settling over me like a blessing. "I promise, Mother. I promise." As the days slipped by, I watched her fade, her bitterness giving way to peace. The house, once so full of shadows, seemed lighter, the air sweeter. I realized, as I sat by her side, that forgiveness was not a single act, but 1,000 small moments of tenderness, of understanding, of letting go. And in those final days, as the world outside turned to gold and the garden slept beneath the autumn sky, I knew that we had found our way back to each other. That love, even battered and bruised, could survive anything, even the breaking point. Chapter 12. The First Step. The morning after Mother's blessing, I stood at the threshold of Hawthorne House, the door wide open, sunlight pouring in like a benediction. The world outside was impossibly bright, the sky a clear, endless blue. I hesitated, my heart fluttering in my chest, my hands trembling at my sides. For so long, the house had been my refuge and my prison. Now, with Mother's words echoing in my mind, "Promise me you'll live, Violet," I took a breath and stepped out into the day. The air was sharp and sweet, filled with the scent of lilacs and fresh-cut grass. I walked down the path, past the garden that was slowly coming back to life, past the gate that had kept the world at bay for so many years. Each step felt strange and new, as if I were learning to walk all over again. The road to town was lined with wildflowers, their colors vivid against the green. I kept my head high, though my heart pounded with nerves. What would people think, seeing me after all this time? Would they remember the girl I used to be, or only see the woman I had become? Older, quieter, marked by sorrow and solitude. As I reached the edge of town, the familiar sights and sounds washed over me. The clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the laughter of children chasing each other down the lane, the warm, yeasty smell drifting from the bakery. I felt eyes on me, curious and kind, and I braced myself for whispers. But instead, I was met with gentle smiles and soft greetings. "Violet Hawthorne, is it really you?" Mrs. Parker called from her porch, her face alight with welcome. "We've missed you, dear." Others echoed her words, their kindness wrapping around me like a shawl. I felt my nerves begin to ease, replaced by a tentative hope. Perhaps the world was not as unforgiving as I had feared. I wandered down Main Street, drawn to the little dress shop I had once dreamed of owning. The window was filled with gowns in every color, silks and satins, lace and ribbon, each one a testament to beauty and possibility. I pressed my hand to the glass, my heart aching with longing and something like joy. The owner, a woman with bright eyes and nimble fingers, stepped outside and greeted me warmly. "You're Violet, aren't you? I've heard you're a marvel with a needle. If you ever want to help out or just talk about fabric, my door's always open." I thanked her, my cheeks flushed with pleasure. For the first time in years, I let myself imagine a future, one filled with color and creation, with laughter and light. Later, I met Samuel Carter for lunch at the little cafe by the square. He was waiting for me at a table in the sun, his smile as warm as the day itself. We talked for hours, sharing stories and memories, our laughter mingling with the clatter of dishes and the hum of conversation. He asked about the house, about my dreams, about the life I wanted to build. "I'd like to help you, Violet," he said, his hand covering mine. "With the house, with anything you need. I want to see more of you. I want to be part of your world, if you'll let me." His words filled me with a quiet happiness, a sense of possibility I had almost forgotten. I looked into his gentle eyes and saw not just kindness, but hope. A hope that maybe, just maybe, I could begin again. As the afternoon faded into golden light, I walked home with Samuel by my side, the town behind us and the future unfolding ahead. The house on the hill waited, its windows bright with sunlight, its doors open to the world. I felt the weight of sorrow lift, replaced by something lighter, something new. With every step, I felt myself growing stronger, braver, more alive. The first step was the hardest, but it was also the most important. And as I crossed the threshold, I knew I was ready to live. Not just for my mother, but for myself. Chapter 13. The Last Goodbye. The morning my mother died, the world was hushed and gentle, as if the house itself was holding its breath. A pale, golden light crept through the curtains, painting soft patterns on the faded quilt that covered her frail body. I sat beside her, our hands entwined, her skin cool and papery in my grasp. The only sound was the slow, shallow rhythm of her breath, each exhale a little softer than the last. I watched her face, memorizing every line, every shadow. Her eyes were closed, her lips parted in a faint, peaceful smile. The bitterness and fear that had haunted her in her final days had faded, leaving only a quiet acceptance. I stroked her hair, whispering the lullaby she once sang to me, my voice trembling but steady. "Rest now, Mother," I murmured, my tears falling silently onto her hand. "You're safe. You're loved." She squeezed my fingers just once, a final flicker of strength. Then, with a sigh as soft as a feather, she slipped away. The silence that followed was absolute, a stillness so deep it seemed to echo through the very bones of the house. For a long time I sat there, holding her hand, letting the truth settle over me. Grief washed through me in slow, aching waves, sharp and raw, but also strangely gentle. I wept for the mother I had lost, for the girl I had been, for all the words we had spoken and all the ones we never found. Yet beneath the sorrow, I felt something else. A lightness, a sense of release, as if the weight I had carried for so long had finally been set down. The house was filled with silence, but it was not the heavy, suffocating silence of before. It was a silence filled with peace, with memory, with the soft echo of forgiveness. I moved through the rooms, opening the windows wide, letting the spring air sweep through the halls. The scent of lilacs drifted in, mingling with the sunlight, and I felt my mother's presence everywhere, in the worn armchair by the fire, in the garden she once loved, in the very walls that had witnessed our lives. I mourned her, yes. I let myself feel the ache of her absence, the emptiness she left behind. But I also felt free. Free from the shadow of duty, from the sorrow that had bound us both. I was no longer just a caretaker, no longer just a daughter. I was Violet, and I was still here. As the day faded into dusk, I sat in the garden, the air cool and sweet around me. I closed my eyes and listened to the quiet, to the gentle rustle of leaves, to the memory of my mother's laughter carried on the breeze. I let myself grieve, and I let myself hope. The last goodbye was not an ending, but a beginning, a chance to step into the light, to breathe, to live. And as the stars blinked awake above the house on the hill, I knew I would carry her love with me always, wherever I went. Chapter 14. The House on the Hill. The days that followed were filled with the sound of hammers and laughter, the scent of fresh paint and blooming lilacs. With Samuel by my side, I set about restoring Hawthorne House. Not just the walls and windows, but the spirit that had once made it a home. We threw open every door, every shutter, letting sunlight and spring air sweep through the rooms. The house, so long shrouded in shadows, began to breathe again. We started in the parlor, scrubbing away years of dust and sorrow. Samuel's hands were strong and sure, his smile never far from his lips. He patched the plaster, polished the wood, and coaxed the old piano back to life. I sewed new curtains from bolts of fabric I'd found in the attic, their colors bright and hopeful. Each room we finished felt like a small victory, a piece of the past reclaimed, a promise for the future. The garden, too, came alive beneath our hands. We cleared away the brambles, unearthed the stone path, and planted new beds of roses and violets. The lilacs bloomed in wild profusion, their scent drifting through the open windows. Neighbors stopped by with cuttings and seeds, their laughter filling the air as we worked side by side. For the first time in years, the house on the hill was alive with voices and music, with the warmth of friendship and the promise of new beginnings. I invited friends and neighbors to visit, their presence filling the house with stories and song. Children ran through the halls, their laughter echoing off the high ceilings. The kitchen was filled with the clatter of dishes and the aroma of fresh bread. The house was no longer a prison, but a place of beauty and hope, a place where the past and future met in the golden light of afternoon. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the garden in shades of amber and rose, Samuel led me outside. The air was warm and fragrant, the flowers nodding in the gentle breeze. Lanterns hung from the branches, their light soft and golden. The garden, once wild and overgrown, was now a haven of color and life. Samuel took my hands in his eyes shining with something deeper than joy. "Violet," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "When I first came to this house, I saw only its sadness. But you brought it back to life. You brought me back to life. I love you, Violet. I love your kindness, your strength, your courage. I love the way you see beauty in broken things, the way you never gave up on hope." He knelt down on one knee, the grass cool beneath him, the garden blooming all around us. He reached into his pocket and drew out a simple gold ring, its surface gleaming in the fading light. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his voice soft but sure. "Will you let me spend my life loving you, building a future together in this house, in this garden, in this world we've made?" Tears filled my eyes, joy and wonder blooming in my heart. I knelt beside him, the earth solid and real beneath my knees, and took his face in my hands. "Yes, Samuel," I whispered, my voice trembling with happiness. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto my finger, his hands warm and steady. The garden seemed to glow around us, the air alive with the scent of lilacs and the promise of forever. We stood together in the twilight, the house on the hill shining behind us, and I knew that we had found our way home. The house was no longer haunted by sorrow, but filled with love, a love that would last as long as the lilacs bloomed, as long as the sun rose over the garden, as long as hope endured. And as Samuel drew me into his arms, I knew that this was only the beginning. Chapter 15. The Beginning. The sun rose over Hawthorne House, gilding the garden in a soft, golden light. Dew sparkled on the grass, and the air was thick with the scent of roses and lilacs, their blooms heavy and lush, nodding in the gentle breeze. The house, once a silent monument to sorrow, now pulsed with life. Laughter spilled from every open window, and the music of voices, old and young, familiar and new, wove through the halls and out into the garden. I stood at the edge of the lawn, the hem of my dress brushing the cool, damp grass, Samuel's hand warm and steady in mine. My heart fluttered with a happiness so bright it felt almost unreal. The garden was alive with color. Children darted between the flower beds, their cheeks flushed with excitement, while neighbors and friends gathered beneath the lilac boughs, their faces alight with joy and welcome. The tables were set with white linen and wildflowers, the air sweet with the promise of summer and the tang of fresh lemonade. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the sun warm my face, breathing in the mingled scents of earth and blossom, bread and honey, laughter and hope. I remembered the years when I had watched the world from behind shuttered windows, my life narrowed to the dim rooms and the weight of duty. I remembered the ache of loneliness, the longing for something more, the fear that I would never be seen, never be loved. But now, the house on the hill was no longer a place of shadows. It was a beacon, a gathering place, a home. The walls that had once closed me in now opened wide, welcoming the world. The rooms echoed with music and stories, the kitchen filled with the clatter of dishes and the aroma of baking bread. The parlor, once silent and cold, was alive with song and the gentle hum of conversation. Samuel squeezed my hand, his eyes shining with love and pride. "Look at them, Violet," he whispered, his voice low and full of wonder. "You've brought this place back to life. You've brought us all back to life." I smiled, tears stinging my eyes, not of sorrow but of gratitude. "We did it together," I said, my voice steady and sure. "This is just the beginning." As the afternoon faded into a golden evening, lanterns were strung through the trees, their light soft and magical. The garden glowed, and the laughter of our guests rose like music to the stars. I moved among them, no longer a shadow, but a woman seen and cherished, my heart open and unafraid. I listened to the stories, the memories, the dreams for the future, and I felt the pulse of community, the strength of belonging. When the last song was sung and the last crumb of cake was gone, I stood in the garden, the night air cool and fragrant, Samuel's arms around me. The house behind us glowed with warmth and promise, its windows bright, its doors open to the world. I looked up at the sky, the stars scattered like diamonds above the lilacs, and I felt the fullness of my life, every sorrow, every joy, every step that had brought me here. I was no longer alone. I was no longer afraid. I had found my voice, my strength, my place in the world. The house on the hill was alive with laughter and light. And so was I. As I leaned into Samuel's embrace, I knew that this was not an ending, but a beginning. The first day of a life filled with hope, with love, with endless possibility. And as the night deepened and the garden shimmered with lantern light, I smiled, my heart wide open to the future, for I was no longer a spinster. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on more captivating tales. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and God bless. See you in the next video.